So I'm ready.
You guys ready?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't you tell me what was going on in your lives, with you and Jacob, before you sought out help at HEU? What was the trigger? What was happening?
We noticed over the last year that Jacob was getting more and more anxious. He had a hard time transitioning from one activity to the next, and the stress just kept building up, and he would say things like, I can't stand it anymore, I hate this. I took him down to Colorado Mountain West and asked about his medication to see if we could adjust his medication. And the psychiatrist said, ask Jacob point blank if he was thinking about killing himself or others. And the psychiatrist was asking if he would ask Jacob if he was thinking about killing himself or others. And he came up with a pretty specific plan. And that was the moment where I realized that things were a lot worse. Much more, how do I want to say this? They were worse than I had expected or anticipated. I was in shock when I heard Jacob talk about killing himself.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make you look a little bit prettier.
Anything you can do.
We want it to look as good as possible, right? Get the light under your eyes a little bit, so there, now you look
Now I look like I have eyes.
lively. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Much better. Okay, go ahead.
So
Thank
let's
you.
jump back for a minute. So before that point, what was the diagnosis for Jacob? What was the condition you guys were expecting or working with?
Jacob is autistic, and he's been on medication to help manage his stress. And as he became older and a teenager, we noticed that his stress and anxiety level kept going up and up and up, and it just seemed uncontrollable.
And Jacob, for you, at that point when you were going to Colorado West and you had admitted you had a plan to kill yourself, what were you going through? What were you feeling?
How I felt about going to Colorado West, or how do I feel about just getting out?
Well, what was going on in your life? You had all this stress and you were unhappy, I'm assuming.
Well, the reason why is because school, for one thing, it really didn't help because it felt like I had to stay on top of things. It just felt like that. It was just hard. It just felt like my teachers weren't helping me enough. It felt like they were just throwing assignments at me, just like chucking at them, and I basically had to catch it in the air like a ninja, just go. It basically felt like they were expecting me too much, and just hearing the world today, how chaotic and destructive everything is, and the news doesn't help, and how Obama's gonna screw up.
It's okay. It's okay.
It just felt like that life wasn't worth living. It felt like that I was just gonna. It felt like it wasn't gonna worth living either way. I was gonna be screwed in the future no matter what. So I just felt like, what's the point of living? And it felt like my dad or my stepmom or even my sister didn't take me seriously. It felt like they didn't care whether if I lived or not. So I basically thought, fine, if they see me, if they just see me as more of a drawback, then fine. Who am I? Then who am I to keep making their life more stressful than they need to?
The one thing I didn't mention about Jacob is that at Christmas time, He had a conflict with his stepmom, and he misinterpreted what his dad said and thought that his dad didn't want him in the house anymore. So Jacob, at 7 o'clock at night, left the house. It was raining and wet. That was one of our first snowstorms, and walked 10 miles to my house with no shoes on. And I think that was the moment where we realized that things were really getting out of hand. That was very scary. That was a very scary night.
So, for you personally, all this is coming to a head, and you find this out. You know that he has this suicide plan. What was going through your head at that point? Where were you at mentally and emotionally?
I just wanted him to experience the joy of life. Life really has a lot to offer, and I have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, so I have a good understanding of how difficult life can be, and I didn't want him to suffer with that. When I was a kid, I thought about committing suicide all the time. And I ran away from home, and there were issues that I didn't recognize when I was younger. Didn't have anybody to tell me that I was depressed and I needed help. And so when I saw that in Jacob, I realized I would do anything to get him help. Even, I just didn't expect he would be in the ATU. I just thought we would give him a change in medication and he would be fine.
So that brings a good point. So, when did you hear about the ATU? You know, how was it presented to you? What were you looking for from ATU initially?
I'd actually heard of the ATU a few years ago when I had a step-grandchild that was admitted to the ATU for similar anger problems. And so that was my first introduction to the ATU, and I thought it was weird or strange. So when Dr. Burson mentioned that Jacob needed to go to the ATU, I was reluctant and concerned. I wasn't sure what he was going to be going into. Dr. Burson reassured me that they were very caring people, that they would take very good care of him. And I trusted him, and I met with the staff a little bit later that day and was so impressed with how thorough they were in making sure that I understood what was going on, what their expectations were for Jacob. So I felt comfortable leaving him. When I left him, that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done as a parent. That was a horrible experience. That moment of letting go of him and turning him over to somebody else for a while.
I can imagine. How about you, Jacob? What did you think when you first got to the ATU?
Well, at first I thought, when Dr. Burson suggested, the thing that went through my head is like, oh no, I've snapped. Because also I thought, when I first thought of it, when he first mentioned it, like when the first word just came out of his mouth, I thought it was gonna be like a sanitarium, like I've literally gone crazy, like I've literally snapped, like I really thought I lost my mind. I thought he was just gonna take me to a place where like basically I had to stay there for, I just had to stay there for years and years and years, and honestly it felt like I was a convict and I was convicted and I was heading to it felt like it felt like I was a convicted man ready to head to prison. It felt like it was a way to get like crazy people like me out of society, so society doesn't have to bother with me or something.
I understand, but it was scary. What did you find once you actually got there, though?
That, well, that basically, it wasn't as bad as for.
Your hand.
But it wasn't as bad as first. I was still a little depressed of having to leave my family for like a week. Even though it was a week, I consider that one of the longest weeks of my life because I was with strangers I didn't know, who I eventually became friends with, but of course some of them had their quirks, stuff like that. Quirks that I personally thought was strange, but of course for them I probably had some quirks that they thought was kind of kooky or strange. So I have no right to judge, but basically I got used to it. It felt like I was going back to like daycare where it was like kiddie around, stuff like that. I felt like I was in there again. And basically my only pet peeve was that I had to ask for everything. Like I had to ask to get my drawer. I even had to ask to go to the bathroom, which I thought was kind of a little bit like unnecessary, but I guess all the precautions that they take are necessary because believe it or not, people are willing to do the weirdest things you could ever think of. So yeah, it was actually a fun experience, even though I had to do lots and lots and lots of paperwork, and I don't like paperwork. I find paperwork very long and very tedious. But at the ATU, I think it actually isolated my creativity. I was actually writing an outline for a story that I want to write there, so it basically helped me isolate my creativity and helped me to develop like a love for like writing with pencil and paper instead of typing, because obviously I couldn't get to a computer there. So basically it helped me isolate my creativity. I basically just wrote down notes and an outline for a story that I want to write. Yeah, even though it was fun, it felt so good when I finally left.
What did isolating your creativity mean to you? How did it make you feel?
It just made me feel joy because honestly, I want to become an author when I grow up, because honestly, it just felt so good. It felt like I came up with some original ideas that nobody came up before. Like I created like basically my story is like a fantasy story, so I created like different civilizations, different races, different like original fantasy characters' names. So it was a sense of release that I haven't felt before, because honestly I never done that until I got into the ATU. I always thought that a computer was the only way I could get my ideas right, but when I went to the ATU, it just helped me develop like a love for writing, because before the ATU, I hated writing with pencil and paper. I thought it was just slow and tedious. But I guess I hated writing then because I had to write stuff that I just had no interest in, in high school, I had a teacher named Miss Thornton who had made us write like Tolman paragraphs, like claim evidence warrant. And honestly, I never really saw the point to that, because it felt like, because honestly, I want to become an author, but honestly, who do you know, anybody that wants to read a book that is like, I don't know, like 200 or 300 pages, who do you know who wants to read a book that's nothing but a Tolman paragraph?
How did you feel about yourself when you left after that week?
It was just bliss. It just felt like finally. It just felt like that. It just I just finally saw the world in a different light. I saw life in a different light, like a more positive light. And it just felt good not to be so negative because honestly, before the medication, I tried to be positive. I really did. I tried to be positive, but honestly, it was just really hard. It was just hard because it felt like everybody was against me, okay? But at the ATU, it just made me realize that that wasn't the case, that they were actually trying to help me, that they actually wanted the best for me.
One of the things when he went into the ATU was so that they could monitor his medication and get it back under control. And that's when we really started to notice some changes in him, and it was very helpful. It turned out to be really a blessing for him, I think.
What did you think of the program as he was going through it? I know you had some questions before he started, but as you watched what they were doing and his progression.
I'm kind of like Jacob. I was a little irritated with the visiting hours. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to, that the staff person had to be in line of sight of Jacob all the time, and so I took him out onto the table, which is out front, and was explained that he had to be in line of sight. So that was a little bit frustrating for me, because I have issues with being structured too. So but I watched Jacob over that week, and that structure really helped him. And they did counseling and talked to him about his medication and what his medication meant, and gave him some coping skills, which I think the writing came out of, was one of the skills that they helped him create, or recognize probably.
What would you say overall, what did having an ATU here in the community, what was that?
I think it's invaluable. I can't imagine any place else that I would want to put him and have him feel safe. One of my frustrations, now that I have a son who dealt with these issues of suicide and thoughts of suicide, one of my frustrations is that there aren't enough resources available for kids. I was grateful that he finally could get some help.
Because I do know it's an issue for a lot of people have to send them to the front range to get services like this.
Yeah.
That's huge. So a lot of times we're asked to adapt the program to even fit specific cases just so they can be treated here. So, and I know autism is something that was actually fairly recent to incorporate that into the program. So,
Yeah. I sometimes, one of the things I've learned about Jacob is that we used to put everything under the banner of autism, and now I recognize that he's much more than just autistic, but he's a human being that has feelings and emotions and struggles like the rest of us. And, the autism is just a piece of him. It's not who he is. It's just the mirror he looks through the world, and he's just a delight. I just enjoy him so much.
It's amazing. How about you, Jacob? How you feeling today with your life?
I just feel like that.
I have to grab another card.
Oh, can you guys hold on a second? Sorry.
Sorry.
We're talking so much.
I just feel like that now I could get up in the morning and ready to take on the day instead of feel like just reluctant to get up, because it just felt like that. It just felt like it just were contempt like it felt like they were content with their ideal of what I needed, but that wasn't always the case. It felt like they just didn't want. It felt like they didn't want to hear what I say. It felt like,
What about now?
oh, yeah, I trust them a little more, but it feels like there's some things. It feels like they still have some things I wish they could like work on, but my dad is stubborn, my stepmom is stubborn, my sister is stubborn, and basically they're just really. I love them dearly, but sometimes they're a little too pig-headed for my taste.
Okay, I know a few of those. Are we rolling, Darcy?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to ask you another question again because he ran out of film.
Okay,
So
put your hand up.
so how do you feel today? So you've been through the ATU, you're moving on with your life. How do you feel about today?
Well, it just feels like I could finally. It just feels like I could finally see. It just felt like I could finally see the world in a positive light. It just feels like. It just feels like that life is worth living, and honestly, if I would have killed myself, I would have denied myself all these experiences. So basically, and I realized my family always has my back. All I had to do is ask for their help, because if I don't ask for it, then how could they help me? And honestly, it just feels like that the stress and agony of just feels like that life is completely worthless. That life is completely worthless, and we're all gonna get screwed either way. That's not how I want it to feel like. That's not how I want it. I don't want to end up like one of those people who just never enjoy life, who just are negative and always talk about how life is meaningless, and how life is meaningless and it's not worth living. Those people are really wrong, and those people should definitely get a reality check. And honestly, because honestly now I'm looking forward to the future, and I'm just willing to take what life throws with me, good, positive or negative. Either way, I want to persevere it instead of staying like this rut which I can never get out of. I just want to live my life. I want to have happy experiences that all my brothers and sisters have. Like I want to get married, have a family, become an author, and I just want to enjoy life, and that's what the medication is helping me do, is to see the world in a more positive light.
Hey, you tell me, how do you feel about the future, where you're at now and the future?
With Jacob?
In general, yeah.
It's been a long struggle with Jacob, dealing with his diagnosis and struggling with all the trying to take care of him. And as he gets older, I'm just more and more confident of his ability to make changes. And that's one of the things I noticed in the ATU, is that he really had an interest to become better, and was really motivated to make the changes that they asked of him. He's a great kid. I'm glad he's around.
Dorsey, you didn't run out of film before her aunt when she was talking about the autism.
We only missed about 8 seconds. But if you want to ask it again to be safe.
Okay, you know that great answer you gave me about he's more than his diagnosis?
Oh, I have that on film.
You have that? Oh, okay,
Okay.
then we're fine. So, is there anything else you guys want to say specifically about your experiences or ATU or anything?
I would have to say, it really does help people, but it only helps people who are willing to go get with the program, because honestly, if you just keep fighting it, then it just won't help. It just won't help you. And if you just focus on just getting out of it as fast as you can, then you're never gonna really succeed. And honestly, all you have to do is just tell what you do. Is that you have to tell. Is that you have to do what they say without question or doubt, because they really are there to help you. And honestly, if you just see them in, honestly, if you just see it as a punishment, if you see it as more of a curse than a blessing, then you're just gonna be absolutely miserable. And if you don't make the best of it, then then you're just gonna destroy yourself while you're in there. It's just gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. But if you go along with the program and do what they say without question or doubt, like go with the program, even though some of the things are a wee bit, or I could think is a wee bit ludicrous, you just have to go along with the program in order to be happy again, just to feel like life is worth living again.
Anything?
I'm, after Jacob's experience in the ATU, I am so grateful that we have a program like this here in the Valley that provides a safe place for kids to go and get the help that they need.
Brilliant. Okay, so the last piece that ties all these, because we have other clients from different programs, so we're calling this like our What If campaign. It's even the fun sci-fi film we're talking about. That's What If is the name of that film. So what ties it all together is a campaign we kind of started with our donor outreach program, and that was a series of slides, and they kind of tie back into the program. So for an example, for Latimer House, we have a woman saying, what if the person you love was hurting you? And then we go back into the interview and we talk about how Latimer House helped her. So those are the what if questions, or sort of what tie all these interviews. So I'd wait till the end because I want to hear your stories and see what fits for you two.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you were talking, when I asked you about where were you at before you went to the HEU, and you said something to the effect of, you were so frustrated you didn't know, if life was worth living, or something to that effect. So yours could be something along the lines of, what if you felt life wasn't worth living? So it's like a general statement for other people that might need ATU, but it's also personal to you. So I want you to say something you're comfortable saying. You understand what I'm saying? What I mean? And Tammy, then you could do the same thing from your viewpoint. You said, what if, it could be, what if your son needed something? What if your son needed something and it wasn't, available in the community? So does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we start Jacob? What would you like to, huh?
Jacob leaning towards his mother a little bit.
Could you lean a little closer to your mom? Yeah.
There you go.
So,
great.
what would you like to say? So what, you're going to say something that starts off with, what if?
What
if they didn't have an ATU?
am I supposed to say that, or?
No, I'm rephrasing
Yeah.
the question.
Mhm.
So what if they didn't have an ATU?
I think I would have some days where it would be okay, but I think most of the time, I think life would just be a severe endurance. Like, it wouldn't be like one of those enjoyable endurance. It would just be like a cycle that would never ever end. It just felt like, it just would feel like that. It would just feel like a cycle that would never end. It would just feel like I'm trapped in this permanent state of misery, and it's never, and I can't be free of it. And honestly, I think eventually I would have acted upon what I said. And honestly, what I said to Dr. Burson is that I became so frustrated that with my dad, my stepmom, and my sister, that I eventually wanted to kill them all, because it felt like they just wanted, it felt like they never take me seriously, and it felt like they they just saw me as more of a. They just saw me as more of an embarrassment, as a failure, and that just got me so frustrated and angry that I just wanted to kill them. And I think if I didn't get any help, I think I would eventually acted upon it. I think my life would have just gotten way, way worse if I acted upon that.
That's the other piece I didn't mention, is that not only was he suicidal, but he had some homicidal thoughts. And as we know with Sandy Hook, that is people are more aware of that. That would have been a horrendous burden for him, because that's not his personality. He's usually gentle and easygoing, and for him to be that frustrated that he would want to hurt somebody really is a mirror into how he was suffering.
So I think what you were just saying, you had two really good ones. So we need to say it really compact and just together. So you had said, so you could say, what, oh God, no, I just forgot the first one. What if, let's do the second one. You said, what if you felt like you became an embarrassment and a burden on your family? Can you say it just like as a statement like that?
What if I became an embarrassment and burden on my family?
Okay, but try like, what if I felt like I was a burden?
What if I felt like I was an embarrassment and a burden to my family?
Yeah, I'll say it again, look me in the eye.
What if I became
That's okay.
What if I felt like I was an embarrassment and a burden to my family?
Very good. The first one you were talking about, you were saying about how life felt like there was, you didn't say no hope though, you said you felt like there was, you remember what you said?
Ludicrous, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember what exactly.
It was really good, and I was like, made a mental note to go back, and now I've forgotten it. At the point before you went to HEU, you said your life was getting, you felt like something like it was piling up, like you just, yeah.
It just felt like I had to climb. It just felt like I had to climb a tremendous mountain all by myself. It felt like my dad and my stepmom and my sister had in my back, and I knew the only person was my mom, but my mom and my dad are divorced, so I could always see my mom like only a couple of times in the week, like say a weekend or something. And I had to deal with my dad and my stepmom and my sister not my sister because she's in the military, but my dad and my stepmom most of the time. It felt like they always saw me as being melodramatic, like this is just teenage drama. And they thought I was eventually gonna get over it. And they just felt like I was just being dramatic. It felt like they weren't taking me seriously. And honestly, I had sometimes of like hurting myself physically, just like, I don't know, just like chopping my fingers, just like slicing my fingers off, or just like shooting out my kneecaps, to give them a wake-up call, to make them feel like, to give them a message that they're like, I am dead serious, why are you not listening to me?
I just remembered what you said. You said something to the effect of, so for you could turn it into, what if living was a burden? Or what if life was a burden?
Yeah.
You remember that? You want to try saying that? So just that part again.
What if living was a burden? What if life was a burden?
Very good. Now say it a little bit slower and separate them.
Okay. What if living was a burden? And what if life was a burden?
Excellent.
Tammy, you want to take one? Yours will be different, obviously. It'll be from your viewpoint.
Yeah. What if I didn't have my son sitting here with me today?
Can you do it one more time? Perfect. I know, I'm sorry, I thought you were cry. It's just so good. I want to make sure we get it.
Be crying.
Yeah.
What if I didn't have my son sitting here with me today?
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. You good? Was it good, Jacob?
Yeah.
He was afraid he was going to go back into the ATU.
Oh God. Just out of curiosity, does he have continuing through the AT or is it through Western?
Colorado
Colorado
West.
Just the
mental
ongoing.
health.
Yeah.
And there's some frustration with that. We just don't, anyway. They don't make appointments anymore. So it's first come, first serve.
Oh.
So it took us a couple of weeks.
I remember you mentioned that's where we had to reschedule your.
Yeah.
thing.
And then we rescheduled it. He was out of town. So we didn't get to see him. We went down there.
Gotta be really rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand why they do it, but I can go down there and wait an hour and a half to 2 hours to see Dr. Burson.
See, I don't. Did ATU didn't have any other suggestions for your follow-up other than, I think Colorado West is pretty much
Yeah.
unfortunately the only
Well, and
game in
Dr.
town.
Burson's on the ATU team,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
so he's tied in that way.
Mm-hmm.
It just showed to me what a lack of resources we have available for these kids. There's just not enough. We shouldn't
Mhm.
have kids committing suicide. There should be zero. There's no reason that we have a high rate of suicide that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
Jacob, thank you. I'm so glad I got to meet you. Truly.
Well, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.